All right, we are back. It's been a while. Business series here today. I have Gord from Business Expert Solutions. Gord, how are you doing today?
Great. It's really nice to be here, and it's really nice to get to know you a little bit more. And sort of, it was also really enjoyed that chance to work with you and your team to deliver, one of my workshops that helps business owners to focus on what they need to focus on.
Yeah, so that was actually what we did was an hour and a half condensed version of your organizational plan workshop, right? And it's kind of the first time I'm doing something like this with the client, but, for one, getting to learn the service, the product inside out versus just a false promise. I like stuff to work, right? So I kind of like this deal we made out here where it's like, let's do the research first, right? And let's put the work in first to determine if it's worth pursuing further, right? I think it's a smart approach. So we just did the hour and a half workshop. It was actually pretty eye-opening. I had a feeling I was going to, you never really know going in. Like I was pretty sure I'd take something out of it. But, when you're there, you're in it. And I'm like, oh man, there's only half an hour left. I could do all day of this stuff.
Yeah. And for people that don't know me, I'm Gord. I'm the president of Business Expert Solutions. I've, got 12 years of experience, as a consultant, working as a facilitator and a leadership coach, organizational development consultant as well. What's happened now for the workshop that you're describing, the organization plan workshop, it's a consolidation of everything that I've learned up to this point. So all the reading I've done, the master's degree that I have in business administration, working with the clients, what I've found is there are people who are getting into their business areas and not having a plan for how to sort of chunk things out and take things on. And when you can actually have a plan that's easy to follow and breaks it down, that's what the intention of the workshop has done. So the chance to get to do it for you, give you a feel for my approach now for how I work with clients. And funny enough, every engagement that I'm in now, I bring this organization plan into play. And it's got sort of 5 main elements, right? So when I'm working with any business leader, I really feel that they need to know their strategy. They need to have a work plan to execute on that strategy. They need to know their people, and they need to know their operations to support those 2 things. And ultimately, they need to really define their results. So it's these 5 key areas that I emphasize in the workshop.
Yeah.
And then with this practical approach that I have to things, just generally, I've been able to have good success so far in delivering the workshop. And then I'm finding the feedback from the workshops being really, really positive because people walk out with something tangible to do. And that's really my whole purpose.
Yeah, for sure. And I know this was like this is designed, it's built for organizations, bigger organizations. But even for someone like myself, who's, it's solopreneur, kind of more like I'd say small business, right? I do have contractors under me, right? I don't necessarily have employees, but they're contractors, right? But you're not sure if that's gonna translate to someone my size, but it definitely was like, so it's like kind of I said with my feedback, there's things you don't know, what you don't know, right? This was like, I try to spend, and I don't spend enough time doing it, but trying to look at the overall picture and direction, right? I kind of refer to it as like the macro. I used to play StarCraft. There's micro and macro, right? But there's some things that, you're spending time trying to make a plan, but you just you don't have a guided framework to do it, right? And this is what that was. You can see like there's elements from there I wouldn't use quite yet. I'm not big enough, but there's definite elements from there, like the overall 5-step thing where it's strategy, then the work
plan,
right? And all the way down to results, right? There's things I could pick and point out of there that I could use to help my business. So I know I will refer back to this. Like it's something I'll keep referring back to because I can see the, once you started going through it, I was like, okay, yeah, I see this definitely going to help, right? Give that direction.
I'm glad to hear that you're going to be able to do that. Most people, leaders know what they know. If you can admit that you don't know what you don't know, then you're in a good place to say, well, what do I need to know? Right? And I'm not trying to make up a rhyme. I'm just trying to say, often leaders are good at sort of a specific area of their business, right? What would you say your unique ability or your expertise is, for example?
That's a good question. I do like coming up with strategy, right? So that's where I find my brain is the most excited when I'm on a whiteboard, mapping out strategies, mapping out funnels, looking at, even doing, like you have your strategy plan. Like I do like writing out like the overview plan and strategy of things. That even goes back to like me playing video games. When I'd go back and look at where my skill sets are, what I like, it's not necessarily like the detail-oriented stuff, right? But I like to look at the overview strategy, the planning, the mapping, the blueprints, right? Versus the detail-oriented stuff.
And isn't that lucky? Like you're a specialist in strategy and making funnels work, and this idea of getting somebody from one step to the next so they can acquire a customer and be successful in their business. That's a lucky thing. Do you have joy for IT? Do you have joy for doing job descriptions?
Yeah, no.
Right. But too bad, so sad, you're a business owner.
Yeah.
So you can't avoid it. So what this process does, the organization plan process, is it takes it beyond strategic planning. Strategic planning's, what do I say? Strategic plans are dead. Often. They're often done, but they're not implemented.
So what would you say, like, what is a strategy plan, if you could explain that to the viewers?
So maybe a little different from what you were referring to, which is a strategy for a funnel of client acquisition.
Yeah.
For me, what it is, it's the strategy for your organization as a whole. So if your business is the funnel business, then what would be the strategic plan for what you're doing? What is the vision? What's the mission? What are the values in your company? What are the big goals and objectives that are going to make all those things go forward? You want to grow revenue. You want to have maybe the best client experience, whatever those things are. And then how do we break that down into something that's actually doable? So that's a typical strategy. It's got the vision, the mission, the values, and then you've got these goals and objectives. And then if you can get that thing together, which is usually like a day of planning in a sense in a year, that's typically what I do as a facilitator when I'm brought in to work with people. That's what I would describe as a strategic plan.
Yeah.
The vision that I'm finding, funny enough, people spend maybe too much time on the vision statement. If you're lucky and you can have a senior leader who really gets into the vision and they want to drive that through the culture of everything that they do. So the vision or purpose for my company is I empower leaders to positively transform themselves and their organizations. It's very clear to me. It's taken me many years to get it to that sort of short sentence.
Yeah.
But every person I touch now, it doesn't matter how I'm interacting with you. It could be a transaction. It could be something that I'm just helping for an hour.
Yeah.
That's why I do what I do. It's why I get out of bed. And it's why I pull the materials together that I pull together. And when I can do that, that to me then is super exciting. So that's my vision statement.
That becomes your vision statement. Yeah.
There's my vision.
And that's something that's developed over time, right? So like I've been in the marketing field for about 5-6 years now, right? But it starts as very broad, right? It starts as full service digital agency. We do everything for everyone, right? That was the approach I was in with like my previous business partnership. And when I started away from media, you learn that you have to find, you have to niche down to become a specialist, to become really good at it, right? So it kind of like the vision almost starts as more of like, if you're doing everything for everyone, there's not really a purpose there. You're just trying to make money, right? If you want a deeper meaning, you start to eventually niche down. That's aligned with kind of your values, right? So that's where I found where I've been trying to position myself with. Previously, I worked with a lot of restaurants, right? Now, not to say it's like I don't like restaurants. Everyone likes food, right? But it's not really what I've learned is that wasn't really my true calling, was helping restaurants grow. I was never a server. I was never, I delivered pizzas, right? But I was more in health and wellness, fitness, wrestling. So like when you asked us today, what's my purpose? And I said, just helping with personal development. But it's like, that doesn't make sense. You do marketing. But if I'm working with people, so you're much more aligned with what I'm trying to go for. You're helping businesses, right? It's closer to my mission, which is actually helping people with personal development. So if I'm working with gyms and helping them grow, that's helping personal development. You help spread that way, right? But over time, your values, your mission starts to define, and you find maybe it's much more enjoyable too once you start aligning that.
When you start to align with the right people. Doesn't matter if it's the customers or the people that you deal with as vendors or that kind of thing. I'm so glad that you're finding that for yourself, because it makes things
took a while.
Right? And then in those, you can look back and say, well, what are those projects I shouldn't have been doing? And you can learn from that. And then continuing with the strategic plan idea, again, we just talked about vision, purpose, mission, which is clear. Values are pretty clear, like respect, collaboration, whatever those things are for you. And if you can get the values defined in a way that they're easily accessible. Some people, they make them too wordy, and that actually doesn't translate down the food chain for the people that you deal with. Yeah. And then you're into your goals and objectives. So what is the big goal? I know in the workshop today we talked about, for a variety of business owners, they said, well, revenue increase. I'd like to do that. That's a major goal. For another person in the workshop, it was employee attraction and retention is a big issue, a big goal for them. So you can imagine those are big goals. They know if they get to them over a period of probably about a year, their company's going to be in better shape. And then when I say goals and objectives, the way it works for me, you've got your big goal. There's probably 3 to 5 of those for your company in a given time in one strategic plan. And then the objectives are per goal. So if I have a goal to make more money, then I would have an objective to get more clients, better clients, the right clients. That might be the objectives that drive that.
Yeah.
Once we get into that wording, what happens then with strategic plans typically is those get written up that way. The execution part is not getting dealt with.
Yes.
So the second step of my process is the work plan.
Yeah.
And I don't mean, it's funny, I used to say, well, let's just do the work plan, everybody. But what I've realized now is many don't know how to do a work plan.
Yeah.
They don't know how to do the what, who, and the when. So by going slower in that moment and saying, well, what is that goal? Great, let's write it down. And then we have a section in the organization plan template where we're able to say, great, what's the objective? And then with that objective, who's responsible for it? When is it going to get done? How long is it going to take them to do it? Find 5 new clients and break that down into something that's more reasonable, as opposed to getting stuck where the strategic plan doesn't get dealt with and you get to the end of the year and go, well, why didn't we get 5 more clients? Well, we didn't have it broken down in a manageable way.
Yeah, and that was one of those things with that I kind of liked about this template was, you have the strategy and you have the goals and then the objectives, right? But then in the work plan, it's actually now how do we follow through with that, right? And this is how I've done my strategy in the past is with the milestones, right? So I kind of broken down quarterly, right? And this is how I've come to kind of do it myself, right? This framework definitely helps like really break it down much further. But it's like when you're writing goals out, a lot of times what I do in the past is like I do a lot of writing goals out, but then having action plan on them doesn't always come through, right? But like in your template there, it's exactly aligned. It's you have objective A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, whatever it is. And then the work plan is exactly aligned with that. And then there was the who, why.
I'm glad you're putting it that way. And it's funny because my unique contribution in this area, when you're making that connection, it's because I see the disconnect with the clients.
Yeah.
So I've seen the disconnect, and now that template is built to simply literally walk you through from one step to the next. We go from big picture to small picture.
Yeah.
And then the way you've just described is, I'm so glad to hear that that's what translated for you, because it feels, sometimes you get that feeling of like, well, I should already be doing this.
Yeah.
But people aren't. So that's fine. So then you just say, well, good, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Great. There's no judgment on that.
Yeah.
Now I can go further because I can actually get into estimating how long this is going to take.
So the word disconnect, that might have been, that's a good word to describe it. For me, there's like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So there's the macro, but then, a lot of times a lot of things, but sometimes there are disconnects with, you might, even with your own process, you might not have it all frameworked out, right? But having this macro lens at everything, and then you can go in and look in all the details, right? It's a way to keep to connect the disconnects, right? So yeah, I think that would be one of the big things I got out of it, I'd say. Yeah.
Connect the disconnects. I'm going to rip off that phrase for you. That's a wonderful thing. And what's nice for me with my experience, 12 years in consulting, another sort of 15, 20-year career.
We're going to use that as a headline on your landing page.
Connect the disconnects, right? It's a great idea. So so now we're into this zone where if I can use my insights it's funny, it's not, my originality in this is not necessarily making up new terms or anything like that, but it is, I think connecting the disconnects is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's pulling those things together. And then because of my experience, I'm able to really work on any part of the organization and make sure that it's always connecting to your strategic goals and objectives. I think that's another area where, for example, you heard me talk a lot about meetings in the workshop. A lot of people just simply aren't looking at the meetings they currently have in their organization, no matter if it's big or small, and saying, why am I doing that meeting?
Yeah.
How long should that meeting have been? Did that meeting move our goals and objectives forward?
Yeah.
And the nice thing is if you put it in that way, it didn't, well, we're never doing that meeting again, but we need to now have the meeting where we're actually going to get those things done. So I'm glad to hear you're connecting the dots. And again, the flow of the document is meant to exactly pull you through into those areas. And my hope is that for the organization plan template, which is now at about 80 pages, it'll end up being about 120 pages in the end. It becomes one main reference document that we then, if the leader, the senior leader, the owner, the VP, whoever that is, knows all the main aspects of this and the sort of the top 3 questions they need to ask about any area of their business, whether they like it or not, then they've got a chance to optimize their business from that senior leader perspective.
Yeah.
But so often, because they're disconnected, and I can tell you, in larger organizations, they're disconnected from HR. They're disconnected from IT. They want IT to run well, but they haven't taken the time to even learn the basic questions of what they need to ask to make IT accountable for what their people need. But what do they hear back? The internet's slow. Why isn't that document opening? Why are people keeping things on their local hard drive as opposed to up on the cloud space like we're supposed to? Well, now they can get in and do something about that if they actually do it. But if they're not conscious and that's disconnected, well, then we don't even have a chance to get alignment from our strategy all the way down to those basic areas of the business.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk a bit about your past and what got you into this. And, like, how did you get, like, what did you do in school? How were you as a person, as a kid? How was life growing up? What led you this direction?
It's, I went back to school at the age of 42. I was the manager of creative services and marketing for City TV in Edmonton. I thought I'd be finishing out in a TV career at the age of 42. At about the age of 39, Blockbuster went like this, Netflix went like this, TV advertising evaporated.
Yeah.
And I actually got packaged out in 2012. So I've had that experience where I'd been full-time there for 10 years. Previously, I'd done a bunch of freelance work and all kinds of things. And then if you want to go back to a long time ago, I was an actor and trained as an actor. So that's sort of the history coming into that zone. But I was in an industry that was dying. And then I actually did get packaged out. Now, thankfully, proactively in 2009, I applied to do my master's in business administration. And I started that journey of as a part-time student. It was funny for me. I was like, I couldn't believe I was writing midterms at 42. I couldn't believe it. And the natural thing for me that would have been there would have been to take the MBA, combine that with my marketing and communications area, and go on to probably try and strive, at a company to go up to that level. What happened for me, though, was there was a guy named, it was one of my professors, I won't name him, drew the organization strategy template up on the whiteboard. And I literally had a lightning bolt moment.
So this is where kind of the idea.
He drew it up in a way that's it's a slight like I now have a slight variation on what he did, but he drew up these 6 areas of your business. And I thought there was 2 things I thought. One, wow, what if I could help people learn how to do that? And the second thing was this guy was a high impact consultant. He'd been doing it for a long, long time, very, very successful. I thought and saw that when he walked in the room, he made a difference. And now, 12 years later, when I walk in the room, I make a difference.
Yeah.
I didn't know that in my early solopreneur days, by the way, in those early years when I had to sort of put my shingle out and get started. Only in about the last 5 years can I say that confidently. And so when I say the crystallization of this is that I thought I was going in a certain direction. I sat in there, I saw that. And then what's been nice now over these 12 years in my practice is I've been exposed to clients that are billion-dollar clients. I've been exposed to small nonprofits. I've worked with everybody. Yeah. And I'm seeing very common dilemmas that they're having. And for me now, by introducing the organization plan template, it's because they're not doing this. Yeah. And when I've crafted the template, what I'm looking for is about 60 hours of your time to actually learn all the aspects of what you need instead of being in sort of chronic crisis. Why is that not working? Why did that vendor not work? Why did that employee not work? That kind of thing. Yeah.
So you mentioned some of the biggest problems they're dealing with. Do you have some specific problems you've seen with big organizations that kind of cross over that you've seen are the common, like 5 problems?
There's a bunch, but I'll say 2 that I've come across recently that are really, really important. If people were watching this right now, the most important thing that they could do is walk away and write down on just a white sheet of paper, what are your roles and responsibilities? If I did that with you, how many line items would go on there because you're running your own business? Yeah. Can you just imagine all the things you would write down? Yeah. Everything from go get lunch to come up with a strategy to change somebody's life. Do you know what I mean? All that's on there. Yeah. Most people haven't written down their roles and responsibilities lately. Yeah. So then what happens is the senior leaders in an organization don't actually know what they're doing. Yeah. So if I describe a large organization, I was recently dealing with somebody with 180 employees, and at the vice president level, they were disconnected from all those things down the road. And I walked in with that very natural question. I was like, where are the roles and responsibilities? Yeah. Because I already knew that people down the food chain were doing things they weren't supposed to be doing. Yeah. That were not aligned with moving their goals and objectives forward.
But it's because even the upper management didn't have theirs defined either.
They didn't have it defined.
So how would the lower
understand? So what's one of the big problems? No, senior leaders don't know what people are doing. Yeah. I can say it that simply. And I've seen it over and over again. And so, of course, we get a misalignment, right? Because workers now, for the most part, they're trying to do their best. But if they don't have the direction and they don't understand the strategy, then they don't have a chance. So, of course, they're going to get off course. They're going to get doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. So I'm going to say roles and responsibilities. Usually what happens is they'll say the HR manager is responsible for this, but they're not, because they do job descriptions. Really what we want to do is get the individual to write it all down. And you've seen the way that I work. We do this very quickly. We can get 80% of this done in 10 minutes. You just write everything down. Pretty quickly, what you can do is rank those roles and responsibilities and see which ones should I be doing and which ones should I let go of.
Yeah. So this is right, sort of cut you off, but I was going to ask while you're talking about this, have you read the E-Myth?
I did. Yeah. Gerber. Yeah. It's great stuff.
Yeah. So this is where he was explaining stuff like that, right? Yeah. You write out your org chart, right? And you almost write a contract as you're going through the job, right? If you're a solopreneur like me, right? Instead of going like directionless, as you're going through each task you're doing, you have to categorize it in your brain. Be like, this is what role I'm in right now.
Yep.
But you create a manual for that role as you're going through it, right? And then you essentially, in theory, you'd come up with all the job roles for the organization.
There it is. And so, and again, I'm a big fan of Gerber as well. And in terms of getting those things to go forward, it really is that moment of sitting down and doing it.
Yeah.
A lot of people disconnect and they don't do it. So how do you get somebody to write the roles and responsibilities quickly? And then if you're the senior leader, how do you get all those roles and responsibilities back into the org chart?
Yeah.
And then start to look and say, oh, wait a second. And you heard me earlier in the workshop say, are you doing $15 an hour work? Or are you doing $200 an hour work? Or are you doing $10,000 an hour work?
Yeah.
The more $10,000 an hour work the senior leader does, the more we win.
Yeah.
So when the senior leader's doing $15 an hour work, I mean photocopying and running to Staples or those things.
Yeah.
It's not a good use of their time. That some of the things that you're doing don't count. How can you know?
Yeah.
But you can see clearly then if we have a larger, more complex organization, the misalignment can happen very quickly. Because the other thing that this ties into is what is your project selection criteria?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know which project to take on? You were saying it earlier. I used to work with restaurants. Do you have a project selection criteria that you map out?
For myself, well, right now I have a package, right? I'm selling a single marketing package that applies in certain scenarios. So that filters out yes or no who it is, right? So essentially it's marketing funnels for appointment-driven businesses. It's called the Online Booking Accelerator, right?
Perfect.
So if you can take online bookings, right? If that works for your business, it can be a restaurant, right? But restaurants can have a lot of different types of marketing, right? But I have a single type of marketing, right? Where it's a single type of very specific framework to complete one objective, and we're going to get more bookings, right? So that at the moment is the criteria of what I'm looking for right now.
Perfect. And so I'm so glad to hear you've at least got one criteria for something.
Yeah.
So you know that experience, right?
Yeah.
Most people don't sit down to be that conscious of what they're selecting. So they take on things that are not aligned. I'll go back to this 180-person example that I was dealing with recently. Someone down the food chain goes and takes on a $5,000 project. In the meantime, someone at the top of the food chain is saying, wait a minute, we don't take anything under 25 grand. Well, that person says, wait a second, I needed to fill up the pipeline. I need to do stuff. But there's a misalignment there. And so then they've gone off and they've done a project that is not going to drive what they need. And in fact, it drove them in a deficit. And so because the senior leader didn't have their hand on the wheel and didn't know what that person was doing in their roles and responsibilities and didn't have a project selection criteria, they're off doing something that's not related to the business.
Yeah.
Now, there's different reasons, and you have to work through the complexity of what I'm talking about. But if you're clear with your project selection criteria, when you're saying, what are some of the big fatigues that I'm seeing?
Yeah.
There's that one. I mentioned meetings earlier. People just need to inventory their meetings.
Yeah.
Do an inventory and say, what type of meeting are we having? And being very intentional about meetings, that's coming up a lot.
Yeah.
The other thing that comes up all the time in organizations as well is stakeholder management. So I mean, everybody, customers, employees, vendors, whatever you're dealing with, people aren't writing down and making notes about who should be on that list. So while I remember asking you, you're natural at, filling in your customer relationship management tool, many people don't know what a CRM is.
Yeah.
Which means that the relationships are in their head or in their phones, but that person wins the lottery, then those relationships are gone from the organization. It happens in nonprofit boards all the time. Somebody comes on the board, they've got good intentions, they might know a donor, but if they leave, that donor relationship is not retained by the nonprofit to get the benefit of that donor relationship in the future because no notes have been made.
Yeah.
No follow-up is there. So when we're looking at organizational continuity, that's another key piece that's a real super fatigue. So it's funny having been around it enough to see these recurring issues. The other recurring issue that's happening for me is around the leadership internal voice. I do coaching as well. What I'm seeing there is imposter syndrome. I can't believe that I'm actually doing this. I don't know if I'm qualified to do this. That comes up a lot.
Like the actual business owner.
The actual leaders. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they think they're imposters.
Of these like larger organizations.
That's it.
Oh, interesting.
Exactly. So there's that coming across. Time management, right? And the other one that many leaders are doing, and this is the culture that we're growing up in, is they're trying to do too much on their own.
Yeah.
So that's another massive fatigue. So they go and they try and figure it out, or they try and do too much on their own. So then that comes from the intimate coaching that I do in one-on-one settings, usually like an hour a month or 2 hours a month when I'm working with leaders one-on-one. And that's emerging as well. So when you say like, what are these common pain points? Those are the common ones. And so funny enough, leaders go into these strategy sessions and they set up all these things, but it just ends up being words on paper. And I say, well, great. You establish those goals and objectives. Are they done? Are they real? And that outside voice, that honest voice that comes into the situation starts to say, and if they are real, they'll say they're real. So great. But many times they're saying, oh, right, this doesn't make sense. And it doesn't move our business forward.
Yeah. To summarize the pain points, which is important. So we have roles and responsibilities.
Yep.
And then
project selection,
project
criteria, like how do we choose projects?
Yeah. And then it almost like systems and processes, I would say to, you brought up the CRM system, right?
Yep. That's it.
Yeah. So it's a question about the roles and responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
So you had a acronym for accountability. It was like, what was it?
RACI.
Yeah. RACI.
Yeah.
Sure. So I wanted to ask, because it's a question that it's something I've been trying to do more myself in my business, but when you're creating a role and responsibility in your organization, like this is more on the implementation side, do you think it's wise to have the person in the role accountable for actually helping establish that role a bit? Like in my mind, I'm starting to go that direction where I'm trying to make them responsible for the role, right? So I have a project manager now that I say, listen, write me up a procedure, a step-by-step process of what you're going to do every month. And let's stick to this, bookmark this. And every time you're doing your job, we add to this, right? But I'm making her half responsible for the job role. In my mind, it seems to be smart. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I think you're on the right track, right? Because
Okay.
you're doing that thing. And I'm just going to back up just in case people don't know what, the RACI means. And by the way, it's not my acronym. It's in the literature.
She actually put that into the procedure.
The RACI.
Yeah, first time I heard it
I'm
was
so
she did.
glad. That's great.
She put it in there, and then you brought it up. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, wait a minute. We're on the right track,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And so just in case people don't know the acronym, R stands for, let's take a project, for example. Let's say, I don't know, a typical project might be, let's set up a marketing ad. Let's just say you had to build an ad. If you start that project and say, well, whose role and responsibility is it? We would say, well, who's responsible for the ad? Well, I'm going to say the business owner would be responsible for the ad because they are ultimately responsible for everything that happens to the organization. Well, who's accountable for the ad? Well, that's the creative. Either it's an external creative or somebody internally who creates the ad. Who needs to be consulted to make that ad as good as possible? That's the C.
So that's the C is the actual, who is the vendor making it or who's the person building it?
Well, it could be, and you can see how it plays around. All we're doing is we're having the conversation. So the consultant could be someone else, like an external person doing that thing, the ad, or it could be somebody, again, internal.
Yeah.
And the I in informed is interesting to me because who needs to be informed that ad is being created? That often gets left out. It may be your board of directors. It may be the senior leaders in the organization who don't know anything about, they're responsible for the advertising. They need to be informed that it's occurring, but that's all they need.
Mm-hmm.
But the accountable person is the one executing. They report, and you can see everybody kind of reports up that food chain. So it's a really good, rigorous way to say, how do we build in accountability to our situation? And if we visit that with everything that we do, it starts to create a really interesting, I was responsible for that. In the workshop today, we heard from one of the people, they said, we built our strategic plan. We got there the next year. Nothing had been done, and they're frustrated.
Yeah.
Well, they never assigned responsibility for the strategic plan. Because if you did assign responsibility, then somebody would be in trouble.
Yeah.
It was important. So just by going through that simple thing of, who's responsible, who's accountable, who needs to be consulted, who needs to be informed. And you can see what I've done in the document is I've made sure that acronym reminder is there for every major section of your business.
Yeah.
IT needs that. Whatever it is, meetings need that. Like just every area needs it.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. The part that I think is challenging, and I think maybe even Brian brought this up in the workshop, but it's like you can have these laid out, and then, you know, for example, someone like myself who doesn't have someone hired on full time, but it's more part time for a very specific task. There's only so much effort, right? But you say you're accountable, you're responsible for this, and sometimes like who's accountable for make sure the RACI's being accountable, you know?
Great point, right? And ultimately,
because I find we can set up processes, but then we try it for a month and then it kind of breaks apart. And then like at the end of the day, it would be the business owner, right?
Yeah. And when you look at immature businesses, they don't have process. And so now we're talking about how do we get to becoming a strategy-driven, mature business?
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it's too bad, so sad. You decided to be the business owner. It's on you.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way to get that done.
Yeah.
But a lot of business owners, because they're busy with the wrong things.
Yeah.
They don't take the time to build in this piece.
So then that's a good point. So that is the time. That's where their time should be spent.
That's it.
Is more on that stuff versus, you know, trying to do the actual job itself. Like they should be, their time as an owner should be spent on this stuff, managing, making sure this stuff is running smoothly.
When we do the roles and responsibilities and we say, well, what are you doing? I'm going to suggest to you, most people, anybody listening to this, can cut off the bottom 10% and just stop doing it. I mean, literally stop doing it.
Yeah.
Oh no, everything's important. It's not.
This is one of the first questions you asked. What are some things you stop doing right now?
What can you stop doing? Did you come up with one?
Yeah.
What was yours?
Well, for mine, I wasn't, mine was like, I could stop doing the actual fulfillment work.
Great.
Right. So actually,
can you stop today?
Could I stop today? Well, I have a team in place to do the work now.
Can you stop today?
Could I stop today? Yeah, I would just have to outsource it.
Can you hear where we're going? I'm sorry, I'm in the coaching mode now.
No, it's fine.
I'm like, why won't you stop today? Like you hear the hesitation.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's because I've been with other leaders.
Yeah.
And when I hear that hesitation, I'm like, well, why? What's the hesitation?
Yeah. So for me, I would say it's because, I have retainer clients, a lot of retainer clients, but then there's new projects coming in, right? I've been forming this little team for the past 6 months, right? But I've been doing a lot of the work myself, right? But I've been slowly handing more and more and more off.
Right.
But it's more like hitting deadlines. And I'm like, oh my God, if I hand this off to them, are we going to hit the deadline? I'm just going to do it myself. And then I'm slowly trying to phase it in so they're taking care of everything and I can depend on them to do it.
I love where you're going because what it does, and certainly the work that I do, is that you can hear me, I'm just ask questions and questions and questions. And we want to get to root cause. The root cause is you're having a hard time letting go. And that's fine. And I don't know you well enough to say that, except I've seen you over and over again.
Yeah.
So then that's the root cause. It's not that you can't let it, you got perfectionism in there somewhere. You got to do it right. Nobody can fail, all those things. And by the way, that's the avatar of all of you who came in the past. If you can get to that root cause part and then be responsible for that and actually ask yourself, how do I let it go? The let it go part is in all the literature. If you look at the success literature, it's all there. It's just a tough moment where your baby, your work, your whatever, except if you don't let go of doing those things, you don't get to strategy. You don't get to the $10,000 an hour work. You can't get there. There's no time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And that's a good point. And it's a nice refresher because this is something, I just went through a business coaching program.
Great.
And this was one of the things they helped point on. They found one of my internal blocks, which is I spend too much time planning.
Right.
I'm a big time planner. I come from engineering. I like strategy. I like writing stuff up. I'm a big planner, right? But she pinpointed, it's like you're planning to plan. Just fill your funnel and then figure it out as you're going through, right? So it's slowly been getting over this, holding on, this planning, and then what we just went over was let's get rid of, like, you need someone in between yourself and doing the work. Right. And I've been working at doing that, but I just need to let it go like faster.
Here's the crazy part. And sorry for this is what I do. So what's an example of something that you could stop fulfilling?
It's just
name it. Name the initials of the client. Don't even say the name. What's the initials?
Well, it would just be more of a task. It's like building funnels.
Okay, building funnels.
Going on to go high level.
Is there a funnel that you could let go of right now, like a specific one?
Yeah, I have 2 in mind right now that I could just.
You've got them in mind. When are you going to stop doing them?
The plan is for next month.
It's too far away. Give me a date.
Yeah. Well, April 1st.
Good. So there you go. And that's my challenge to you today.
Yeah.
And
that's 2 funnels that it's actually been on the mind. I just need to do it faster. Like hand off faster.
Yeah. Why are you going to wait 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Why can't you do it tomorrow?
So actually, this is funny. So I'm going to Mexico on a trip, right? I'm going to Mexico. And then earlier this week, I was kind of panicking. I was like, okay, I have a lot to make sure the ship is sailing smooth. There's a lot of to take care of right now. But then it was pretty quick. I was like, you know what? This is a blessing in disguise, because what you need to be doing, you should have handed this stuff off already, right? This is forcing you to hand it off.
Yep.
And I'm pretty stubborn. I have a thick skull. I'm stubborn, but
and it's fun.
If I get smacked around enough, I'll finally do it.
It's fun having worked with a bunch of folks, again, with similar profiles, and the idea of putting a date on things and executing.
Yeah.
People don't do it. They avoid it.
Yeah.
That's why the can gets kicked down the road. And then is it real or is it not?
Yeah.
And do you really want to let that work go or not? Are you really just a perfectionist in hiding?
Yeah.
That's the deeper work. And funny enough, I've been in moments like this where it's like, okay, how do you get at that? That's the root cause. That's the reason. So we can on paper say, oh yeah, I should let go of those things, but what's really blocking you? And so I deal with people, conflict, culture change management, big issues like that. It often gets back to this kind of thing. It's not the mechanics, not the process, not that we don't need to work on those things. It'll get back to individual considerations.
Yeah.
And then the letting go piece is huge. And by the way, it's a great life lesson if you can kind of get there. Yeah. And it'll not only benefit those 2 projects, but once you start to get onto that muscle of what to let go of.
Yeah.
Also, the next people that do it aren't going to do it as well as you want. And that's going to really bug you.
Yeah.
So when they fail, and they will.
Yeah.
What do you want to do about that?
Yeah.
And how do you work that through?
Mm-hmm. So I actually, for these, so I have 2 new, not new, in the last 6 months, the guys that have been helping me with funnels and marketing, and they're actually better than me at it. Right. So, I had them just recently within the last few months, because a lot of time I outsource, right? I use Upwork. I hire people from Upwork. So I have a marketer from the Philippines, one from the States, right? I just recently, and I wish I'd done this sooner. Like when I brought them both on, I brought them both on at the same time, to take on 2 different funnels, right? To see who was going to do better, right? Then I started realizing these guys have different skill sets that kind of work together. So just a few months ago, for the first time, I was like, let's see how they work together, right? And let's set up a meeting and let's get them talking instead of me trying to control it. These guys are good at what they do. Why am I here slowing things down? Let these guys who are better than me at the actual marketing and the planning and actually like the funnel strategy, let's let them run the ship there. Right. So this is what's been happening the last few months. And it's been one of those things that I'm like so happy. I finally realized let's just let these guys, don't slow these guys down.
Where did the conversation start? Roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
That was the root. That's why it's in the document. That's why we want you to explore that. And now look at what we opened up. And how lucky for you that you're actually making progress in this area. Some people end up still trying to do everything all on their own, and they just simply can't scale. It's not a chance. So good to hear that you're building out that muscle.
Yeah.
Now the next thing is saying, well, what's that next thing that you're hanging on to? And how can you go faster to let it go?
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things is you're trying to balance budget as well, right? You only have so much, you're trying to make sure there's profitability, right? And then there's a fear of, okay, so this guy's going to need 20 more hours. This guy's going to need 10 more hours. This will give me the time to focus on sales, right? Which I need to do, but I have to be bringing clients in to make sure we're paying for all of these guys, right? So that's another one of the pain points is actually having the money to pay for all these people. I know there's a role for them. Let's say, oh my God, it's going to cost me this much money. Which although doing that would allow me to be where I want to be, which is the face of the company, sales, marketing, right? But it's one of those, it's kind of scary to make that jump because you're like, I need to land clients to make up for this.
There's no easy answer to this. The the mentality around, is it a cost or is it an investment?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
How do we switch into investment mode? And that's the only way to scale.
Yeah.
If it's always a cost, then you'll always, and by the way, when those freelancers turn over, and this is awkward, because especially when you're dealing with people that aren't full-time, they'll come and go.
Yeah.
So then you'll be,
That's what I've, like the last few years, there've been funnel specialists coming in and out, right?
and so you get brought back into doing funnels.
Yeah.
But if you're doing funnels, you're not selling.
Yeah.
So it's a real challenge for sure around how that goes, but that gets back into the strategic planning aspect of what's this customer base? Who do you need to be landing? What's the quality of your customers? Do you have that right mix of customers, and how does that go?
Yeah.
What does that cash flow projection look like? You can hear me kind of doing the work that I do, which is anywhere in that organization plan dashboard template. The nice thing about working with me is I can take you to any piece of that and connect that together.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And starting to see, like, there's a lot of times when, as a business owner, you kind of feel like you're just running on a hamster wheel, right? Or swimming upstream, I've used in the past, right? Because there's so many things you're doing, and sometimes you feel like you're behind the ball. But having this framework, like having a little framework that you can go to, like one that, like, okay, I'm okay with making my own frameworks, but I don't know if they're good frameworks, right? Having a valid, trustworthy, winning framework that works, that works, like that's incredibly valuable. Seeing that there, and this is the steps, and it's not actually that crazy. It's not that bad. Just these are the focus points, though. It helps, like that will help with everything, managing time, knowing what to focus on, right? That could change the game as a business owner.
I hope so, and it's to give any leader relief.
Yeah.
Any leader of anything, and exactly, you're not going to do the whole thing. What do they say? How do you eat an elephant?
It's one bite at a time.
One bite at a time, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way the framework is built. What I'm finding in the success literature is, and why I built the framework the way I did, is the success literature is not quite detailed enough. So if the success literature says, some of them would say, you need to know the process of HR. My question is, how much does the leader need to know about the process of HR? Because many leaders don't know anything about human resources, as an example, or they don't know about financing or accounting or whatever these major areas of their business. But what are at least the top 3 or 5 questions that they need to answer, that they need to know at their level of leadership? That's what this template is for.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's honestly 40, 50, 60 hours of work.
Yeah.
And if you can spread that out over probably 1 quarter, 2 quarters, then you can absorb it in. And now what I'm hoping for is the leader says, I don't know what I don't know, but now I know enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we want to get them to.
Yep.
Because then they can be in a true leadership position to know where the deficits are in their business, and also not to get snowed under when they get something in front of them. I had a client, for example, a small business owner. They had about maybe 6 employees or whatever that was. And they said, well, I don't like what's happening on my website. I said, great. Do you mind if I deal with the account rep from the marketing provider for your website? They said, go ahead. So I went to the account rep and I said, I looked at the proposal that you sent to the client. They can't read it. Had all those extra line items in there and whatever. And I'm like, they don't know what's going to happen. Somebody said something about their website they didn't like. They don't know how to write the copy. They don't know anything else. The account rep had too many people on their account list. So they're like, well, we can't really change that. I'm like, okay. So I go back to the client. I'm like, they're not moving fast enough.
Yep.
And so we changed the provider. That website provider was gone. We switched them into a new website provider. And then that client got the service that they needed with the explanation they needed to be able to do their work. So that's what I'm finding, is that unless we have this approach where what does the leader need to know about websites?
Yep.
Do they know enough to select the right vendor? Do they know enough to know that it's working? But often they don't, and they don't know where to start. And when they're into an area that they are confused about, they often ignore it.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about now, we've probably been going for about half an hour now. I want to spend some time on, like, because I work on growth strategies, acquisition strategies. I want to talk about your story with Business Expert Solutions. What it's been your story of growth? Like, how have you brought it from 0 to where it's at now? And then now, what is the plan from here going forward? And this is where we can talk about, like, the stuff we're working on a bit too. So
I think what's happened for me now, if I sound confident in the way I'm talking now, it comes from the disaster of all those things. Like, if we flip the table, I'm sort of giving you a hard time about letting go and whatever. I have gone through a number of iterations where I had the vision. I'm literally executing the vision now with this organization plan approach. Before I had that, I tried different things: succession planning, I wrote a book about effective meetings. I thought that would be the way in to meet people to do this. It didn't really, it got some traction. It took me around the world in terms of presentations and this kind of stuff, but it was never an essential, a must-have for people. I have experience in creating online courses and this kind of stuff, so I dabbled in that area as well. So you can hear my meandering, honest road, which was not good, and had some good years and bad years in terms of dollars to show for it, but a lack of focus.
Yeah.
And what's happened now is the organization plan approach, knowing that I'm going to be able to empower them, and then they're going to be able to run their organizations and optimize their organizations. It is a very clear mission-driven piece for me now. So that when I walk into a conversation, it's very, very clear what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to do it. It's a highly complex sort of way to approach things.
Yeah.
But what I think, there's two things now. I think it's the right thing to do. And I don't think any organization can avoid it. Yeah. So now I know I'm in the right lane. Yeah. And so the growth for this one now is sort of exponential because the workshop is there. So that's good to go. The template has been built and that's good to go. What are the next steps? Yeah. It's going to be getting it into probably an online course format. Yeah. Also, I'm going to be experimenting with a thing they call the Canada Alberta Jobs concept, where this is going to turn into 7 modules, 4 hours per module. Yeah. If I came to you as an owner, I would say, do you want to learn the whole thing in 28 hours? And I'm going to teach you and your senior leaders how to do this. Yeah. You only pay for a third of the cost if we can get that through. So suddenly we've got them all going through and their senior leadership team learns the entire thing. They're going to have that under their belt and be able to go forward. Yeah. So far with the organizational plan workshop, what have you been doing to get the word out? How have you been, like, what has been your strategy for getting this concept in front of others right now? Yeah. So I'm in my first sort of quarter of rolling this out. And it's been mainly to colleagues where I've got good colleagues in terms of being able to introduce the concept. So just like referrals. That's it. And my best one so far has been through a colleague who then helps support nonprofit leaders. And I was got the workshop into a room with 20 of those people. Yeah. And I got immediate strong feedback. Yeah. And this was the one last week, right? And was asked to do a proposal for one of them right away. And so that's going to lead to actually some work. Yeah. Today in the workshop today, I don't know exactly what the follow-up will be, but got really good response. Yeah. And what I can see is that the wheels are really turning. Like people really are getting 4 and 5 and 6, 7 things out of the workshop. They're able to go forward. So what I'm going to try and do now is take this workshop to as many people as I can. Yeah. Early on, it's going to be a free workshop. I know the high value of it. The template is high value. Yeah. And you're reaching out just to people you know, or are you going to be, how are you going to be reaching out to people? Yeah. So right now it's with people that I know. Yeah. And then my next tier, because I believe that this will work for associations as an education piece, for example. So industrial associations, anybody like a construction association where there's business owners that are gathered. Yeah. A chamber of commerce. Yeah. I'll take it to. And just trying to be part of those meetings and. Well, I want to deliver the training through their mechanism. They offer training to their members. Oh, okay. So then what I want to do is, because what we heard today also, it's valuable to do it with one company, but it's really valuable to do it with multiple companies in the room. Yeah. So that we can get all those different perspectives. Yeah. The piece that I'm seeing. That was neat today when there was some There's a lot of cross-population, right? You stop feeling isolated. Yeah. Oh, wait a second. That person's thinking the same. Oh, they had the same problem I had. That's a real value in it. Yeah. Any of the entrepreneur organizations, I got one feeler into like an EO type setting where entrepreneurs gather. And then I'm just feeling out, I think this is aimed at businesses that earn somewhere between $5 and $100 million in revenue, from what I could see. And they'll make really good use of this. And especially because they've got multiple leaders in play and we can educate that whole team and really get things going. Yeah. It works really well for nonprofit because the nonprofit leaders typically are being raised up from their technical area. They know how to take care of kids. They know how to deal with people with disabilities or maybe deal in the arts and run a theater. Yeah. What they haven't taken the time to do is get a low-level cut of all those different aspects of their business that they should be paying attention to. Yeah. Finance, accounting, IT, HR, all those things. They haven't done that. So this is in sort of an absorbable amount that would allow them to go further faster. So I know it's going to work really well in nonprofit. Yeah. And so any nonprofits I can get in front of as well. Yeah. So that's, you're getting right into the stuff I wanted to talk about, right? Because it's like, as you've seen, like the stuff that's important for the work we do is, you need to know who is the target customer. Yep. And when someone says it's for everyone, well, we help dial that in if you haven't helped dial that in, right? We want to find who is this niche that it's part of, right? So nonprofit leaders, right? Who else do you think this benefits the most? So you said organizations. I'll go versus one layer in there for the nonprofit leaders. There's many nonprofits that have their strategic planning process coming up. So I'm going into one on the weekend where they haven't done strategic planning for 3 years.
Yeah.
So their 3-year plan is up.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is out of COVID. They had one before COVID and they're coming into 2024. They've got to get their next 3-year plan going. So that's a dead target.
Yeah.
Any nonprofit that needs a strategic planning facilitator to go and facilitate the day. And the sneaky part that I do is I introduce them to the organization plan document and say there's a better way.
Yeah.
So we do that piece and that goes together. When I talk about the 5 million to 100 million, so having already dealt with oil and gas at 17 million, I've also dealt with significantly larger organizations as well. Those guys they've scaled to a certain level where they're 10 plus employees. It's probably in the industrial sector if they can do it. The difficulty with reaching them is what I'm seeing is a lot of business owner attitude towards this thing is, why do I need that? If I'm making money, things are fine.
Yeah.
And they don't get at it, but their cultures are often suffering.
Yeah.
And they're not optimizing their business. So now I'm going to drill in the sub niche under what I've just said is not just a business owner, not just an oil and gas guy who's got 10 employees or more. They have to be open to learning.
Yeah.
So they're not sort of closed off, and bless the people that are able to go ahead and, $100 oil, they can go ahead and they make lots of money.
Yeah.
But when they're down to $30 oil for a barrel, they get into a jam because they don't have all this stuff in place.
Yeah. So, and open to learning. Sometimes a person would be open to learning if you address a pain point, right? So if you address a pain point, and you kind of brought one up subtly right there, is their culture is lacking, right? So what would you say are the main pain points of these companies? So like with the nonprofits and these oil and gas, would they be approximately the same pain points?
Yeah, I mean, I can just sort of give you direct point of service pain points.
Yeah.
So I had one guy, fantastic at doing his work in the oil and gas sector, just say to me, Gord, why won't these people do what I want them to do?
Yeah.
And that's how he's thinking. And then we dig into that and we start to find out, well, here's why. Here's why. And we actually, similar to what I was doing before, but that's a real pain point. They cannot, attraction and retention is brutal. Anybody in that sub $30 an hour range, it doesn't matter if it's for-profit or not-for-profit. And I'm talking about, these are now green hands going into the oil field. We're talking about people going into early childhood care, that kind of thing. Very difficult. That's turning over all the time. So because they haven't got a handle on this, the whole thing and how it goes together, they continue to suffer. They continue to have that turnover. So we hear turnover. We hear people in roles where they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they sort of get off the rails. So those are sort of direct pain points that I've seen from the work that I've done. Also, the leaders themselves don't know how to manage themselves. So they're having trouble with their relationships at home. And I'm not a marriage counselor.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you, if you're not into a 360 leadership type approach, your business is suffering anyway.
Yeah.
And when I get in there and I start to work, especially with the senior folks that are up, they're 50 plus years of age, they haven't even thought about how to exit their scenario.
Yeah.
So
sources for
they're at their desks till they die, and that's too bad. Because why did you get into this in the first place? So they haven't even been asked those types of things to go forward.
Yeah. And the way my brain is thinking about this right now is like, when that guy sees an ad on his phone, what's going to be that messaging? It might not even be, hey, look, I'm Gord. I do this organizational plan workshop. That's not going to mean anything to him. When you're addressing his pain point, like what is his actual problem? And that might slowly lead him to, hey, here's a small one step towards, hey, this is what I do, blah, blah, blah. The next step, I wonder what would be that thing that wakes him up and might not even be related to the business necessarily. What is that underlying pain?
That one piece about why won't people do what I want them to do? That's common. So I'm hoping that one is workable in a nice, smart mind like yours.
Yeah.
Are your golf clubs collecting dust? Why am I at work all the time? I'm working 80 hours a week. I wish I could learn the violin, like whatever that is.
Yeah.
Like there's something in there about what they're not getting to do.
Yes. That's a big one. So someone that is always, like I said, maybe feel like they're swimming upstream, but they're always working. They're doing 80-hour weeks, but it's because they don't have a well-oiled machine working as their organization.
Are you in 30 meetings a week or more?
Yeah.
That gets people's attention because I've met them.
Yeah.
And what's happened is they're in meetings during the week.
Yeah.
Which means they're doing the work they're supposed to be doing at night and on the weekends.
Yeah.
So they're suffering in that way. So you can hear me not being an expert in this area, but certainly saying from a point of service, these are definite pain points that are real.
Yeah.
So how does that translate into, like you said, something I'm scrolling by that gets my attention?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the stuff we will, like, that's the stuff we're working on, right?
Totally.
That's stuff we're working on figuring out. And even at the end of the day, when a strategy, like when a plan that we come up with, if we determine that it's good to go, the only way to really know is by running and testing and see what the market thinks, right?
It's funny.
And through testing and through trying different variations, but always be, like you say, in right in your workshop, having a system to measure, right? And then you make adjustments, right? So you do this from an organizational plan standpoint. I have this as far as a marketing customer acquisition standpoint, where it's like we have a trackable system where it's like, you have these goals here, we can track, and then we make fine-tune adjustments, like just small variable adjustments until we find what is working. Something like this, we might say, yes, this is like a lot of potential here. But when it comes down to it, we need to know, is it going to be working on these platforms? Is this going to be connecting? We're going to be having to test a lot of different things, right? But by having that structured, measured approach, you slowly fine-tune until we're hitting numbers.
And I'm glad to hear the way you're expressing it. I just, if that can be encapsulated alone and transferred to business owners, most business leaders don't have a marketing budget. So you're at the short end of the stick already when you walk in the door to try to do your work, because they don't have a number.
Yeah.
I'm like Yoda on the owner's shoulder or on the business leader's shoulder. And I end up being a conduit between them and you to assist. I don't want to be in your way. I don't know what you do. What I'm saying is, I can say, when you name a number, you have a reason for that. And the rollout that you're talking about, in my opinion, takes 12 to 18 months. It's not something that you're going to turn around. But what happens is the owner walks in and goes, I gave you $5,000. I want customers walking in the door in 30 days. In the television advertising business, they made those promises and they didn't come through. People underinvested in those areas. It goes on in your world too.
Yeah.
So when I talk about the organization plan, it's saying, well, kid, then what? And you were talking about cash flow earlier. Do I pay my freelancers? Do I advertise? What do I do? We get into those constraints, that constraint conversation.
Yeah.
So how do we make your freelancers successful? How do we make you successful in your funnel building work to be able to carry out, and be in the best way possible to get the best results? That's what we're starting to get into now in this too. And I think by if you don't take a holistic approach, then what's happening is I've got you in front of me. I'm like, well, you want whatever you want. Well, the IT person wants something and they want something, but I don't have a whole plan. I don't know who to give it to and how, or how to make sure, what's the priority.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you have any, I'm thinking we should wrap this up kind of soon. I think we could keep going talking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
But do you have any, is there anything you've left out or you want to add or get in here? Did we miss anything from the organizational plan?
If I can back it up and say, if you are a leader and you are open to saying, I don't know what I don't know, is there a way to learn the things that I need to know about every aspect of my business? Then this approach, the organization planning approach that I've put together, is going to be really, really valuable. The other part I'll say also is don't wait. Don't hesitate. So when you're working too many hours or you're tired or you think you're just a hero or whatever these things are, get help. And I always think people need about 5 people at least in their current life. They need you've got the fitness background. They need a trainer, and they probably need maybe a psychologist if they need to do some deep work, and maybe they need a paid coach, but they also need mentorship. So I can't say enough about it, but you talk about other pain points in businesses. Business leaders are really bad at asking for help, really bad at it. So the ones that are able to get help, they go faster. So you'll go faster if you actually go and get the help you need. So please look into systems like the organization plan system. Either get it, work with me, that's great, or find a way to get the help that you need. So like you said, I was learning earlier that I had to get out of the way of these freelancers. You learn that faster. Because when you think about businesses as they scale, it's one thing to be at $100,000 in revenue. It's another thing to be at $1 million, another thing to be at 10 million. Leaders are good through certain zones. They have the skill sets to grow with the business as they go, because that's where everybody wants to go. They want to grow. So do they have those skill sets, to get there?
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, nice chatting with you, and excited to be working with you here. This is definitely a fun project, and it was super fun actually seeing this in action. So
I'm so glad, and thanks for taking the time and thanks for being a great participant in the workshop. And just if anybody needs to get in touch with me, it's businessexpertsolutions.com, and they can get in touch and if they want to follow up.
Yeah, and there'll be links in the description as well. So
great.
Okay, thanks, Gord.
Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Okay, see ya.